Shalom and welcome to Challenging Torah, a project of the Malibu Jewish Center and Synagogue. Noach. This is the line of Noach. Noach ish tamim haya b'dorotav et Elohim italech Noach. Noach was a righteous man. He was blameless in his age. Noah walked with God. So begins our Torah portion this week. And of course, we immediately ask, what do you mean, b'dorotav? He was righteous in his age. He was blameless in his age. Is this a subtle put down of Noah? In this age, everyone was so terrible. Maybe Noah was the best they had going. Is the only person God could find who was even mediocre? Is this the project? Or did Noah walk with God and follow God's direction because the two of them were in lockstep? That's really the conundrum and the challenge of this week's Challenging Torah. And so we look at it through the lens of our Musar program. Musar, again, is how we look at our own inner qualities. We began last week with an exploration of humility and God's humility in withdrawing God's presence in order to create the universe, which he creates through speech. And now we come to the story of Noah. And it is interesting to look at it through the lens of shtika, or silence and speech. Noah is silent. As God says, I will now destroy the earth, for the earth has become corrupt before God, and the earth was filled with Hamas, which means lawlessness, very interesting. And God speaks to Noah and tells him exactly how to build the ark. And Moses, Noah, I confuse the two, but our teacher here really is Noah. And Noah says nothing. Noah is silent. The name Noah means comfort, means to be in a place and be settled. And the world is completely unsettled at that moment. There is no comfort in the world. Noah makes a choice, which is to walk with God and follow the directions. He does not make the choice, as Abraham will do later, to argue with God. And so, in the opinion of Rabbi Levi Yitzchak Berdichev, a 19th century Hasidic scholar, Noah is a failed tzaddik. According to him, Noah saw himself as too small in his own eyes to be able to speak up, to speak with others and urge them to repent, to argue with God and urge him not to destroy the world. Of course, this is not the first destroyed world, we know. According to the Kabbalah, there are many, many worlds which have been broken apart. It's an experiment for God. And we, of course, are to redeem those shattered shards, sparks, as we become tzaddikim, blameless in our own age. At this moment, the world facing a watery death, a dissolution back into pre-creation, as it were, Noah's silent, says nothing. He does gather the animals and his family, and we know he makes an ark. But shtika, silence, as it says in Ecclesiastes, there is a time to speak and a time to be silent. Was this the time to be silent? Would it have made a difference if Noah had spoken up? We ask ourselves this question as we explore our own speech and silence. When do we speak when we really should have kept our mouth shut? Often, in family disputes, it would have been much better if we had just stayed on the sidelines and been silent and not given our opinion. Or would it have been better for us to guide our families in different ways? And of course, we face a world that could face destruction at this very moment. Violence, Hamas, appears to be spreading throughout our entire planet. Do we speak up? Do we remain silent? What is it to be tzaddik b'torotav, a tzaddik in our own age? What are the responses that we need to give? And how much silence do we need? Silence as a whole is very difficult to achieve in our world of computers and phones and endless technology. For Noah, wasn't so easy either. Imagine the noise on the ark, the din of all the animals who didn't know this would be a good time to meditate. The creaking of the ark, the sound of the waves. It must have been an enormously noisy time. And then God uses his speech to order Noah off the ark. He doesn't get off by himself. God directs every move Noah makes. And so God comes off the ark. God gets Noah off the ark, and then says, in God's words, I now establish my covenant with you and your offspring, and with every living thing that is with you. I will maintain my covenant with you. Never again will all flesh be cut off by the waters of a flood. Never again shall there be a flood to destroy the earth. And God sets a bow in the clouds, and Noah is silent. This is not a covenant of conversation. This is a declaration and an acceptance. We don't know what Noah thinks about the bow in the clouds. God creates the world through speech, and God, like many of us, talks to himself. He talks to himself when he says, shouldn't have done that. As long as the earth shall endure, seed time and harvest, cold and heat, summer and winter, day and night shall not cease. Noah says nothing. I can look at Noah as a person with PTSD. He gets off of this ark. It has been a horrendous year. He plants a vineyard. He gets drunk. He is in some way dishonored by his children, especially Ham, who is the father of the Canaanites. And we now hear from Noah. The first thing he says that we really hear from, except, yes, sir, is a curse. And he says, cursed be Ham, cursed be Canaan. The lowest of slaves shall be his brothers. Wow, that's all Noah has to say. Generations pass. And in the end, God uses God's speech to dissolve rather than build, because humanity does not use its speech well. We are the only animals who speak. We are the only ones to be God's partner. We share that gift of speech with God, but we need to use it not for greed and violence, but properly. And so humanity gathers together to build the Tower of Babel, just called the Tower at first. And that tower is to proclaim man's superiority over God. And God confounds their knowledge. And gibberish is what happens when language dissolves and the tower falls, and we are left once again with the challenge. When and how do we speak up, and how do we use our voices to create a better world? Please join us on Shabbat morning as we continue our conversation. Shabbat Shalom.